Almighty and everlasting Father, you have given the Holy Spirit to abide with us forever. Bless, we pray, with his grace and presence, our bishop and other clergy and the laity who will soon be assembled in your name, that your church, being preserved in true faith and godly discipline, may fulfill all the mind of him who loved it and gave himself for it, your Son, Jesus Christ, our Savior, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Amen. Thank you all for taking a little time to be with us this afternoon to take a look at what the resolutions that have so far been submitted for convention are, and to perhaps make suggestions about how we could improve on any of that work. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're just going to go through resolution by resolution the four that we have on tap. So just 1 second while I share. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So our first resolution, WTN 2025-1, is titled Mission Strategy for a Changing Diocese. The proposer is the Reverend Sarah Cowan, and she is still confirming her endorsers for this resolution. But the purpose is as follows. Whereas the Episcopal Church honors the understanding of a parish as encompassing not only the church building, but also the places and people within its geographic radius. And whereas Episcopalians, we honor the concept of a cure of souls such that the church is called to care for and build relationships with all who fall within a parish's geographic footprint, and is furthermore not limited to presence on Sunday mornings. And whereas we believe the Holy Spirit to be working in and through the potential merging of 5 Episcopal faith communities within Shelby County, and whereas this merger will impact the number of faith communities in the diocese and the Episcopal presence in underserved, lower income communities in North and South Memphis, and whereas the diocesan faith communities outside of Shelby County face numerous challenges due to changing demographics and finances that call for the continuation of diocesan attention that is focused and thoughtful. And whereas in the midst of these challenges and realities, a mission strategy for the diocese could guide decision makers in embracing opportunities for strategic growth, as well as racial and socioeconomic diversity. And whereas the laity, clergy, bishop, and diocesan staff have both an opportunity and a duty at a time such as this to fully engage in discerning and implementing a vision and strategy for God's mission of presence in the Diocese of West Tennessee, be it resolved that this 44th Diocesan Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee supports having the Standing Committee and Bishop and Council discern and develop a mission strategy for the diocese with the input of lay and clergy persons from throughout the diocese, and that a report of progress and recommendations be given at the 2026 Diocesan Convention. Sarah, since you're here and you proposed this resolution, I don't know if you would like to add anything before we begin some discussion.
Yes, thanks, Rob. I appreciate the opportunity just to give some additional context. I'm the Reverend Sarah Cowan. I have the privilege of serving as the president of the Standing Committee, and have been in that position, have been on the Standing Committee for 2 years, and now I'm serving as president. And a lot of this comes, I think a lot of the wording is self-explanatory, and I promise I will have sort of a better explanation or context on the floor of convention, but just didn't have time to write things down for today. But a lot of this comes from just some general discussion with clergy colleagues. I was part of the small church conference planning team and had the great opportunity to hear about all of the good work and also challenges happening among our small churches, which are often in very rural areas. And then our most recent standing committee meeting just about a month ago also touched on the issues of, where do we see the Episcopal presence going forward in the future? And really, it was the bishop that I heard say these words initially, this idea of mission strategy. Where might we grow if we are consolidating? What does that, what do we feel about our Episcopal presence in areas where we might be leaving? And so I just had some energy as chair of the standing committee to work with the bishop in developing what you see in front of you. We went through several drafts. I'm grateful, Bishop Phoebe, for our back and forth over the last couple of days. I'm grateful to Scott Haight for some guidance on the legal side of things in terms of canon law. One of my original thoughts was to sort of outline this more specifically, the scope of the work of this committee. And we have realized that that's something that really the standing committee, bishop and council, diocesan office, and finance committee have the ability to do, much like a vestry in a parish. But it was important to me that we have some conversation on the diocesan convention floor. And, we have so many wonderful things going on in this diocese. And sometimes we go to convention and there's a little bit of discussion. Of course, we talk over lunch and things like that. But to me, this felt like just something that we really needed to, as a whole body, begin to engage with conversationally, and see what feelings are out there and thoughts, and then take all of those, let those inform the work of the committee that would be formed. I am working on some endorsers, but I do definitely have two endorsers here present, Hester Mathis, Reverend Hester Mathis, and Reverend Donna Gerald as well. Both of them serve on the standing committee. And I'd be happy to take any questions or thoughts or anything like that.
Sharon? Questions or concerns or input? Bishop?
I will say that in my sort of back and forth with our vice chancellor, really the mission strategy of the diocese is the work of the standing committee and bishop and council. And so I don't know that we actually need to form a separate committee to do the work, but I think to have a process by which standing committee and bishop and council can really hear from a broad group of people from throughout the diocese sounds like something that would be really helpful to the members of both of those groups as they begin this important work.
I think that's where I want to kind of just encourage. I think the word that has been resonating with me lately is engagement and diocesan-wide engagement. So often we're really, I would say, bad about saying, well, why don't the diocesan leaders do such and such, when really it's up to all of us to get in there and to get involved and get engaged and really spread the load of that work. So I hope that in supporting this resolution, it's really our way of saying, yes, your diocesan committees are on this, and we also would like to invite the engagement of the wider diocese so that we get lots of perspectives around the table.
Yeah, I would like to echo that sentiment. Thank you, Hester. It helps us build a community and build connection among all of the people who are attending convention and then can take that back into their particular communities. We're not a very large diocese, so we have an opportunity to really come together and all be mission focused moving forward. And like with any election, we are elected representing constituencies, so to speak. And the best way to do that is to get input from the people who are most affected. So I appreciate Sarah bringing this forward. I think it's a very positive move.
I also feel like it is something really, really good that can come out of this, where some parishes may really be facing some challenges that other people could also hear about, and then think about it and pray about it. Who knows where God would lead us with a solution, where the solution would come out of. So I'm very encouraged for this. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm Barb Fraser with Grace St. Luke's. I'm a delegate this year, and so I'm sitting in on this. And so I guess my question is, if this is perceivably already the responsibility of the standing committee, can they not host some sort of workshop informational meeting to get this input and connection, or is it just more effective to appoint a group that's going to meet with it regularly? Is there some outcome that you're wanting other than this coming together on this particular topic? I guess if it's already the responsibility of a different group, I guess we need I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
I'll speak to that a little bit from my perspective, but and then please others join in. My initial hope or thought was that the convention body would ask that there be a committee formed to sort of examine, discern, and report back to the convention for looking at mission strategy. Where are we divesting ourselves of the Episcopal presence, say in South Memphis, North Memphis? Where might we invest? Where is the population growth happening? And my original thought was that we need some folks who are great, have knowledge of demographics, have knowledge of real estate, have local on the ground knowledge to sort of form a mission strategy committee, if you will. And I think in advising, in the advice that we sort of went back and forth, looking at what canon law says and looking at what actually the role of some of our governing bodies are, we moved in to center on this is the work of the standing committee and bishop and council. I think that's how it reads, to do this work. But my hope still is that there could be a lot of input from experts around the diocese who have some expertise in the local context. I don't know if that answers your question, Barb.
Well, it seems like it elevates the priority and puts focus with individuals with expertise to report, I guess, to the standing committee and or the convention with more information and perhaps some way to move forward and speed things up, or just more focus is kind of what I'm hearing from this a little bit. That makes sense. I get it.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? We want to keep moving forward as soon as we can because we have a lot to cover.
In response to Barb, I'd also say that oftentimes when standing committee members and bishop and council reach out to get that diocesan engagement, it helps if it's not the first time people are hearing it. So bringing it forward at convention is almost like planting the seed so that then when there's follow-up, there's a lot more buy-in and a lot more idea of what we're talking about.
Got it. Thank you. Anything further? Sarah, Hester, Donna, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next is WTN 2025-2, deacon participation in the church pension group. This is proposed by Deacon Jerry Endicott and endorsed by Archdeacon Hester and Deacon Debbie McCandless from St. John's. Deacons in the Episcopal Church generally serve in their faith community positions with little or no remuneration and fund their own ministries. The church pension group has now determined that if deacons were paid even a nominal amount, those deacons would be eligible for access to the benefits provided by CPG. While those benefits would not include pension income commensurate with retirees from full-time employment, participation would provide valuable resources throughout a deacon's ministry and into retirement. This would be especially attractive to younger persons exploring the diaconate. Nominal remuneration opens the opportunity for eligible deacons to participate in CPG programs of interest. Many dioceses across the Episcopal Church have implemented nominal deacon compensation in the years since CPG made this determination. CPG provides resources for clergy and lay employees of faith communities in the Episcopal Church, particularly retirement benefits. One of the resources is Credo, a program that helps both active and retired clergy pension plan participants by presenting a holistic approach to wellness for mind, body, spirit, and heart. Participants examine and evaluate their health and wellness from the spiritual, vocational, physical, and emotional health and financial points of view. CPG also provides pension and retirement savings plans, health benefits, and educational services. One must be a contributor to the church pension fund to access these benefits. Resolved that the 44th Convention of the Diocese of West Tennessee requires each faith community that is financially compensating a deacon to offer the required contribution of 18% of that compensation to the church pension group on behalf of the deacon. And be it further resolved that all other active deacons who are not financially compensated be offered at least $100 a month from the faith community they are serving as remuneration, and that each such faith community also offer to make the required contribution to CPG on behalf of the deacon. And be it further resolved that bishop and council consider covering an eligible deacon who experiences a gap in assignment to a faith community, provided the deacon remains canonically resident and in good standing. And be it further resolved that this regulation go into effect as of January 1st, 2027, but faith communities are encouraged to begin this practice in 2026. And be it further resolved that this resolution does not apply to any deacon who has reached mandatory retirement age, currently 72, as of the time of implementation. So, Jerry, since you're here, I don't know if there's anything that you would like to add about this resolution.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about it. I am coming to you today. I'm not sure how my video is here. I'm not at home. Coming to you from Christ the King Center, just north of Albany, New York, where I'm attending a board meeting for the Fund for the Diaconate. And our resolution has been quite the subject of conversation the last day or so. So as the resolution states, we would be joining a number of other dioceses who have put this in place. And this is upon the recommendation of General Convention. And unfortunately, I don't have that resolution number or year in front of me. I forgot to pack it. And I just have my phone here. But there was a recommendation from General Convention once CPG made the change where deacons with nominal compensation could be part of the group. And so the recommendation from General Convention was that dioceses take a look at this. So obviously this is asking our congregations who, are already somewhat strapped to make a financial contribution towards their deacons. And so we are proposing $100 a month, which would actually cost a parish or mission who is not currently paying their deacon anything, $1,416 a year. And then, of course, if they're already compensating their deacon, then it would increase that compensation by the 18% that goes to CPG. But this provides so many, it's not going to provide a sizable pension for a deacon who, for instance, gets into the plan at age 50. But there are a number of benefits, including Credo. There's discounted Medicare supplements as these deacons retire, moving bonuses or moving expenses. There's just a number of things that it provides in addition to a monthly pension. So I'm looking through my notes. So this would, $1,416 a year isn't a whole lot for the benefit it provides, and the fact that this would be a congregation that is benefiting from the ministry of a deacon without any current compensation. So it's not meant to add, stress to the church, which is why we recommended it go into effect in 27, because that allows our congregations with deacons a budget year to work in this arrangement. So that's about it, unless there are questions.
Thoughts, questions?
I'll draw attention. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Oh, this is Scott Haight. I was just going to ask a question. When you say that the diocese would cover an eligible deacon, are you talking about they would pay them the $100 a month? Is that what you mean?
On a case-by-case basis, it's for bishop and council to consider. And that's because deacons serve at the pleasure of the bishop, and there could be gaps, short gaps between assignments. For instance, it's determined that my time's over at Holy Apostles in Collierville, and there's a month or two gap between that and a new placement, then the bishop and council would be asked to consider that $100 plus the 18 during that interim period. And I would think that would apply to minimum compensation, not the compensation that the deacon, if they're currently being compensated at more than 100, I would think at that point that minimal compensation would come in the interim.
And Scott, to also reply, this is Hester Mathis, and it's really about access and continuing those benefits. So to the point that the diocese can help with not causing a disruption to benefits,
right.
That's what we're asking bishop and council to consider. And to the point that we can allow our deacons to have access to all of those extra benefits of CPG, that's what we're asking everyone to consider.
Right. The primary point is not the dollar amount. I mean, $100 a month is not, going to change someone's life, but the benefits it provides can.
Yeah, I understand the CPG benefits.
Yeah.
Is there a time period? Do you know if there's a time period when they're not receiving? Is there any kind of grace period that CPG grants before they would drop you, or do you know?
I do not have that information in front of me.
We don't need to know that today. But.
Yeah. I think the main point would be we're not asking for, let's say I just decide, I just don't want to be a deacon for a while. Then no.
Right.
That's why it's a case-by-case basis, based upon the circumstances. And we certainly need to do the research as to if there is that period of time. I know that the deacon cannot pay on their own benefit, on their own behalf during that interim. So.
So this is Donna Gerald. It is my understanding that when there's a gap in service, as a priest or a bishop, you can file a between cures application. I do not know if that applies to deacons or not.
Okay.
And in my own case, when I had a between cures, it was up to me to pay that amount at a minimum level, not at the level that I was earning, but at a minimum level set by CPG. And this was several years ago, so that might be different. And again, I don't know if that would apply to deacons or not.
Okay.
But CPG has thought about that between cures.
Okay, thank you, Donna. And we will take a look at that, which makes it all the better that it's a BNC. We're not saying it will be paid, but that will be considered. So.
How many deacons do we have in the diocese? Do we have
We do not have a lot. We have about 8 active deacons. That's off the top of my head. And several of those are over the age of 72. So it would not apply to them. We're probably looking at, I think, about 5 active deacons. And the majority of them are already receiving compensation, but they are not getting the CPG benefit.
Yeah, my main concern is if we have any case where it would be a hardship for a mission or a small parish. There are probably ways of dealing with that, but we don't want to cause a situation that's barely holding on to drop off, because the flip side is anybody doing the mission needs to have the benefits.
Correct. And that's the thought of the $100 a month. It seems that just about any place could probably come up with $118 a month. And most of our small congregations who already have a deacon are already paying them more than that 100 minimum, because that's the only clergy they're being served by.
Yeah,
So,
I'll back Mary up on that the missions that are really heavily leaning on our deacons are already compensating our deacons.
Yes.
The ones who would be compensating for the first time are the larger parishes that have a deacon serving as a deacon within a larger team. So the impact on our parishes would be minimal compared to the benefit for the deacon. And again, we've given them this year to work through it, and to plan for it and to prepare for it. And I'll also say we've done a little work around the idea that this will be offered by a church. There have been some cases in our diocese where a deacon had said, I want to serve without being compensated. I don't need that access to benefits. And that's still an option too.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else before we move on? Thank you all. The next 2 resolutions both have come out of the Committee on Constitutions and Canons. The first one is WTN 2025-3, clarifying language in Canons 7 and 11. This one's endorsed by me and Father Jonathan Chesney. Whereas there is some ambiguity around whether persons serving an unfulfilled term on a standing committee and a commission on ministry can immediately be elected to a full term, and whereas Canon 9, Section 6 regarding bishop and council is very clear, quote, in the event of a vacancy occurring during a term, the next annual convention shall elect a person to fulfill the unexpired term, but the council may fill the vacancy on an interim basis until the next annual convention. A member shall be ineligible for re-election for 1 year after completion of any term of 2 years or more. And whereas consistency and clarity on this matter in Canons 7 and 11, mirroring Canon 9, Section 6, would be beneficial, resolve that the language a member shall be ineligible for re-election for 1 year after completion of any 2 years or term of 2 years or more, shall replace the current language of Canon 7, Section 1B, and resolve that the language, a member shall be ineligible for another term for 1 year after completion of any term of 2 years or more, shall replace the sentence in Canon 11, Section 1 that currently reads, no member whose term has expired shall be eligible for another term until the expiration of at least 1 year from the completion of the previous term. I will say that this came out of a conversation that I had with Father Jonathan Chesney about the Commission on Ministry when we were talking about reappointing 2 members who have fulfilled unfulfilled term, and we wanted to reappoint them to full terms. And when we read the canon, it was just a little ambiguous. I spoke to the chancellors about it, and they both agreed that the ambiguity allowed for this practice, which we had done in the past, but that there could be some clarity around it. So that's the impetus for moving forward with this. So, questions or thoughts? And then for just a second, I'm going to share has done something strange. Yeah. No thoughts, no questions? Great. The next is WTN 2025-4. This is about the role of the standing committee, which is in Canon 15. This again is endorsed by me and Sarah Cowan, who's the president of the standing committee. The purpose, whereas it is common practice across dioceses of the Episcopal Church to have either the bishop and the standing committee, or the bishop, diocesan council, and the standing committee approve the conveyance or encumbrance of any real property held by the diocese or congregations of the diocese. And whereas the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee requires the standing committee to approve only the conveyance or encumbrance of any real property that has been dedicated, consecrated, or used for divine worship. And whereas this arrangement can be procedurally confusing when it arises, and whereas it would be beneficial to the collegial relationship between bishop and council and the standing committee to eliminate this confusion, resolved that the language in Canon 15, Section 3A should be adjusted to state, without prior consent of the annual convention or of the council and of the standing committee, and resolved that the language in Canon 15, Section 3B shall be adjusted to state, provided that the prior consent of the annual convention or of the council and of the standing committee be given, and resolved that Canon 15, Section 3C, which reads, in addition to the foregoing, if the real property has been dedicated or consecrated or used for services of divine worship, the consent of the bishop and of the standing committee shall also be required, be eliminated, and resolved that the language of Canon 15, Section 3D be adjusted to state, in any case referred to in paragraph A or B in this section 3, if for sufficient cause the bishop determines that the consent cannot wait until the next meeting of annual convention or of the council or the standing committee, the bishop may, with the advice of the chancellor, give consent to the proposed action, but shall also make report thereof to the next meeting of the council and of the standing committee. I'm sure that is as clear as mud to everyone. Again, I'll just say, really, all this is doing is, taking out this little piece of the standing committee only approving the conveyance or encumbrance of a property if it's, say, your name, and making it the approval of the standing committee for all properties, just as it is for bishop and council. Because it does become a little confusing sometimes when there is an incident with property. There's a lot of dance back and forth and trying to make sure that Bishop and Council and Standing Committee are doing the right things and communicating well with each other. And I'll add that some of this has come out of something that Christian is going to address in the next segment. But I'll stop there and say questions or concerns or thoughts.
This is Donna again. I have a question.
Yes.
Are there provisions for the bishop? Well, the bishop can call an emergency bishop and council meeting, and the standing committee president, I guess, would be responsible for calling an emergency standing committee meeting in this case, rather than leaving it solely on the shoulders of the bishop to give that approval in the case that standing committee and bishop and council and convention are too far in the future.
I think that I'll let Scott kind of speak to this, but and I think that if this came up, that's probably exactly what would happen, Donna, is that there would be a quick Zoom to try to get things done. I think that provision has existed in the canons just as an in case. I don't know if that's ever even happened. But Scott, I don't know if you want to speak to that in any way.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, the bishop does have the authority to take, I guess, what you might call it, emergency action or action if there's not enough time to get the appropriate approvals. But typically these types of, most of the time, this involves some kind of financing involving the property, or they're doing something where that's got to be, it's an encumbrance on the property, so it has to be approved. And that goes through the finance committee for their evaluation and recommendation to both, would be both to the council and to the standing committee. So usually there's enough lead time in these kind of cases that it wouldn't be necessary for the bishop to act, but we just want to make it clear that, you know, it may be a situation where you're trying to hold a good interest rate. You don't want to wait, or, you know, there could be some circumstances where it might be necessary for the bishop to exercise her authority to make a decision and then have that ratified by those bodies when they next meet.
Thank you, Scott. That makes sense.
And I'll also add that, you know, in the purpose, I said that it is the practice. This is really getting us in line with the practice of most dioceses. The reason that it hasn't been like that in this diocese is it's just sort of one of those little strange idiosyncrasies that came over from when there was the Diocese of Tennessee and the whole state was one diocese, and a lot of those canons sort of got cut and paste into our canons, for lack of a better way of saying it, and it's just sort of the way it's been, but that doesn't mean it has to be the way it stays.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo that with the work that's been done in the last year, which Christian will talk about, we really became so much more aware of the fact that we were not necessarily in alignment with how the standing committee operates in other dioceses. And this is, I find it hard to follow some of the language, but I trust Scott Haight completely that all of this is perfect and will get us in alignment with how many other standing committees operate.
There any thoughts, questions, concerns? Thank you all. So this next part, I'll take off the sharing. Christian is going to talk a little bit about the study that was done over the last year by the Committee on Constitutions and Canons that was about the resolution from last year about streamlining diocesan governance. You may recall that this was about the possibility of, instead of having a bishop and council and having a standing committee, that there might be just one body, which would in essence mean eliminating bishop and council. And so that study has been complete, and that report will be delivered at convention. And Christian, now I'll give it to you to speak a little bit to what that bottom line is from that study.
Thank you, Canon Rob. I am Christian Segnoni, and I served as the chairman of this committee. Last year, convention had asked this committee to study this feasibility for merging these two diocesan bodies and make recommendations. That's why we had to work on this, and we did some work and met a few times. We wanted to compile practices across other dioceses nationwide. So we wanted to learn from their experiences. We are very grateful for Andy Cobb, Scott Haidt, and Canon Rob for painstaking work that they did in gathering all the information that we needed, asking other dioceses of what they did. And so from what we learned, a handful of other dioceses did merge their two governing bodies, but there were specific reasons as why. Maybe there were few small dioceses, and maybe others had quite a massive distances to cover, which necessitate them to do that. Some dioceses did a hybrid system according to their needs, but most dioceses had the two governing bodies separate. So while this resolution spoke to the idea of efficiency, we discovered that having two separate governing bodies had more advantages, especially safeguarding the bishop's authority, preserving checks and balances, and our diocesan value of getting different people from all parishes to serve. We also discovered that in some dioceses, they had problems finding people to serve, therefore reaching quorum. Also, some of these boards may require a specific skill set, either in finances or law. So the standing committee does handle a lot of confidential information relating to persons in the ordination process, which Bishop and Council does not. And also, the standing committee handles a lot of work, especially at the time of the selection process for a new bishop, which is a lot of work. So having them be also responsible for the budgetary and programmatic work of the diocese during these periods would be a big hassle for that board to work on. So by merging, we would be asking for more time for members of the combined committee, since the B&C meetings takes typically 2 to 2.5 hours, and the standing committee meetings are typically 1.5 hours. It might be harder, even more, to recruit people to serve if we are asking them to set aside 5 hours per one meeting. So our standing committee and B&C, as Sarah was saying, they all had time to review the work that they did and gave us ideas of how they could work together more in transparency to serve the diocese better. So they already had begun ways to collaborate by some president of the standing committee visiting the B&C. So briefly, this committee does not recommend our two diocesan governing bodies to merge, but rather we recommend for them to stay separate. That was the gist of the report. Any questions or thoughts?
You can, by the way, you can read the committee's full report on the convention page of the diocesan website if you want to see it before you see it in your convention booklet. Another thing that we're not reviewing here during this time are the convention's rules of order, which are essentially the same from last year. You can also read all of those on the convention website as well. But thoughts about what Christian had to say?
I'd like to echo Christian's thanks. The persons who did the work on this comprehensive report, which hopefully you can find on the diocesan website, They involved calling other dioceses, talking with chancellors from throughout the country to really figure out what most dioceses were doing. And so thank you to everybody who put the work in to allow us to get to this point of presenting a resolution.
All right. If there's no questions, Andy, Scott, are there anything else you feel like we need to raise during this time, or does anybody else have any other questions that we might want to address in these last few minutes?
Well, Rob, I'll just say I don't think Christian mentioned this, but under the national canons, every diocese is required to have a standing committee, but they're not required to have a diocesan committee. So if we were to merge them, it would effectively mean eliminating B and C and just have a standing committee have all those responsibilities. And that leads to the cumbersome requirements that Christian did speak to.
All right, any other questions or thoughts or concerns before we adjourn?
No, no question. No question.
To speak. Jillian, can you unmute yourself?
Who?
Hang on 1 second. I think Jillian's in our conference room. Let me go help her unmute that. I'll be right back.
We didn't hear what you said, Andy.
Oh, I thought he was having trouble. No, I don't have any questions. I was just going to thank you for your leadership in this Constitution Canons Committee this year. And
there we are.
Excuse me.
My concern,
thank you.
My concern is about the motion that we passed at last year's convention, and it was left up to this convention to do something with it or to decide what is to be done with it. My proposal is very simple, that we simply publicize the motion on LGBT rights that we passed last year as widely as possible.
And Jillian, we can add that to the agenda for both Bishop and Council and Standing Committee, which is actually this Thursday, to solicit their input and how it should be publicized. So that's something that we can handle even before we go to convention.
Okay. Should I be there Thursday?
We have to actually approve the 2026 budget, and I think that may take a fair amount of time, but I know you sent some written remarks to me, if you would be comfortable with me sharing those, we can include those in the materials that we distribute.
Okay. That would be fine.
Okay.
Bishop, thank you, Jillian. Hearing nothing further, thank you all for taking the time to be here. For all of you who have submitted resolutions and so thoughtfully worked on all that language, and any of you who attended just to know what's going on ahead of time, we appreciate it. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer anything I can or direct you to the person who can help you. All right. So many blessings. We will see you at convention, if not before.
Thank you.
Thank you.